I don't care if our kids wrestle or do judo, but I think every kid should do a combat sport of some type, even if they just do the basics, like the beginner, because there is something to be said for not having anyone else to blame the loss on. Yeah. It's all on you. You train, you get what you put into the sport. Yeah. And it's just a great confidence builder. And I've noticed that with our own kids. Just the longer they do it and the more they know that our love doesn't depend on whether they win or lose. It's all about effort and attitude. We always just tell them that.
On the 23rd episode of Passion in Progress, Hillary and Chris Saba. Chris Saba was a 2-time Olympic alternate, was on 2 world championship teams, won 2 national titles, was ranked number 1 in the nation for 3 years, and was an Olympic coach of the 2016 Rio wrestling team. His wife, Hillary Saba, formerly known as Hillary Wolf, is a 2-time Olympian in judo. She was the first American, man or woman, to win the Judo Junior World Championships, a tournament won by only 2 other American women since, Kayla Harrison and Ronda Rousy. Hillary also has a unique beginning to her career path in that she could have pursued acting. She played the sister of Macaulay Culkin in the Christmas classic Home Alone and Home Alone 2, as well as was the star main character in the movie Big Girls Don't Cry, They Get Even. So now that they're retired from their respective sports, what do 2 married elite athletes do with their time nowadays? They run a wrestling club in Colorado Springs, coaching kids ranging from 5 to 13 years old. I had the great pleasure of attending one of these youth wrestling meetups, and I gotta say, it is one of the most intense things I've ever seen. Seeing kids wrestle one-on-one presents an amazing atmosphere for overcoming challenges and learning from adversity at a young age. And in this podcast, we cover things just like that. What it's like coaching kids versus Olympic athletes, what it's like to attend the Olympics, and what it takes to become an elite athlete to participate at the Olympics. Now, before we dive into this amazing podcast with Chris and Hillary, I just want to say thank you so much to my listeners thus far for sharing the podcast out into the world. Here's what some people have been saying thus far. Lincoln Riddle tweeted out, "If you're not subscribed to Javier's YouTube channel, what are you even doing with your life? ? Dude makes killer content. Thank you, Lincoln. I'm looking forward to that Christmas card." Githian Shield tweeted out, "Something anyone doing YouTube should listen to. Javier makes some of the best content on the internet, and this podcast is great. Passion in Progress with Javier Mercedes." Well, thank you, Githian. Methodbox tweeted out, "We highly recommend listening to Javier Mercedes X's new podcast featuring Jeff Barch. They spit so much truth about storytelling, it should be a required listen. Methodbox, you're the best." They're referring to episode 19, Powerful Video Storytelling Tips with Jeff Barch. For anybody that creates video content, I highly recommend checking it out. And if you are truly getting value out of this podcast and are inspired to go out and pursue your own passions, please consider sharing this podcast on your favorite social platform. You can tweet it out or screen capture it, post it in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes X. Without further ado, let's take it out to some Olympians, Chris and Hillary Saba. What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress podcast, where we interview people and what they're passionate about, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you are motivated and inspired to go out and pursue your passions yourself. Today on the podcast, I've interviewed some power couples before, but never in the history of the podcast has it been like physically powerful couple, as well as just being a really cool couple. We have Hillary and Chris Saba, 2 Olympians on the podcast. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Just for context for the listeners of the podcast, let's go ahead and go over some of your background, Chris. I believe going back to like your high school days, you had a school record of 153 wins in Greco-Roman Wrestling, correct?
So just for full disclosure there, and this is very important as far as all Olympians go, my wife is a 2-time Olympian. I was a 2-time Olympic alternate, was on 2 world championships teams, so I won 2 national titles. But, you know, and getting to my story, some of it is, you know, getting that close to really your ultimate goal and then falling just short. So, and I was a coach for this recent Olympic team. 2016 as far as wrestling, and we'll get into, is a little bit of a complex sport, as in there's a couple different styles of wrestling. Internationally, they compete in Greco-Roman and freestyle. When you watch Iowa versus Penn State, that's folk style or collegiate style wrestling. You know, my 153 wins through high school was actually in high school wrestling. I think that, you know, that number has been come and gone. So there's other people that have
Oh, I know,
achieved,
but during the time.
that. So yeah, I kicked some butt and I was very good. I was one of the best wrestlers in New York State during my time.
Yeah, you were ranked number 1 in the nation at one point in time, weren't you not?
Sure, for like 3 years. And that was actually kind of peaked at the end of my career. So when my best years were when I was maybe 26 till 30 years old, which was good to kind of always finish on a high note.
You were part of one of the original people at the training center, correct? For Greco?
Yep. And a little bit of a luck of what time I was competing at, and they started a resident wrestling program in Colorado Springs in 1993. Just graduated college, kind of in lieu whether I wanted to continue wrestling, potentially try to make an Olympic team, or just get out there and grind out a work somewhere. And I opted for the opportunity to go and pursue making an Olympic team and winning world medals. And so that's why, just because of that, 93 is when I graduated from college, and that's when they started that program. And it's a robust program now that's, progressed through the years. And, we had some colleagues that started the same time as me that did very well. So I was blessed to have that opportunity.
Did you won one of the worlds, didn't you?
I did not win the
Okay.
world championships. That's her.
Okay.
By the way.
Okay.
She's the world champ. Ultimately, what I'd like to talk about is that, obviously was very good, but was not an Olympic champion, was not a world champion.
You're an alternate, though.
Yeah. So I did
96
very
and
well.
2000.
I did very well, but a lot of my I had exposure to people and friends that did achieve that, saw what they did to do it. Can't say they did much different than me, and a lot of life can be right place, right time, and putting yourself in a situation to win. And then there's also no guarantees, even if you do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that being said, that gives you some context into Chris's background. So definitely no downplaying that. And the fact that you were coaching the 2016 Greco is awesome. Let's go ahead and talk about you, Hillary, which is quite the storied background, if anything. But obviously, you were in the Olympics twice, 96 and 2000, correct?
Yes.
For judo. And then after high school, I want to say, or just teenage years, you pivoted from your career in Hollywood. What most people know is the sister of Macaulay Culkin, and then Big Girls Don't Cry as well. Going on from there, participating in 2 Olympics. And then also what you just said, winning. It was the very first juniors, wasn't it, that you won in judo?
It was the first time an American won the Junior World Championships.
That is badass.
Thank you.
It is.
But let's go ahead and dive into both of your guys' beginnings and just how you guys got to where you're at now and what you guys are doing with the wrestling community here in Colorado Springs now. But since we're on you, Hillary, let's go ahead and talk about like where you were at as a kid and how you just got into judo and how you pivoted and did all that stuff.
Okay. I actually have an older brother who is 3 years older than me and was a really shy kid and skinny, and I had this pretty tough dad. So his best friend was in judo. He was a black belt in Chicago where I grew up.
That's a good mentor.
Yeah. So he decided to put my older brother in judo to kind of toughen him up. What he didn't expect was for his 5-year-old daughter to jump in instead. So I actually started going to judo practice and watching every practice and participating kind of on the side. And after 2 years of doing that, I finally convinced my parents to let me compete. And so at 7 years old, I went to my first junior national tournament. It was in Chicago, so my dad said I could go. Got my butt kicked, decided I didn't like that too much. And so that was kind of the beginning of my story. After that, I pretty much dove in head first and just was really dedicated from the very beginning with my athletic career. And I always loved sports and was pretty passionate kid from the very start. Didn't take a lot of encouragement for me to go to practice or do extra stuff. It was just kind of who I was as a kid. And then the acting stuff was kind of something that I fell into. Totally not planned. Friend of the family met me at a party. And I always say to people, I think that I spoke kind of like I do as an adult. I mean, I had the same deep voice. I was pretty outgoing. And this guy was in the business somehow and told my mom, you've got to get her picture taken. And she was really hesitant, totally not game. But after a while of the guy nudging her, she got my picture taken. And one of my brother's classmates, the mother was a talent agent in Chicago. And so she, represented me. And within a month, I had a part in an Alan Arkin movie. I played one of his daughters in some Christmas movie. It was called A Matter of Principle. And then it kind of just went from there. There's quite a bit of luck, I would say, in acting as far as when you're a child actor. I mean, if you're outgoing and cute and willing to, talk in front of a camera and not be shy. Yeah. That's a big part of it. And then the other thing is, if you look like somebody and you need to be the daughter of somebody or, the son of somebody, then it helps to get you parts. And plus I lived in downtown Chicago. So there was kind of that accessibility of tons of casting agents. So it just kind of one thing led to another. And obviously Home Alone was a John Hughes movie. Everybody knows John Hughes did all of the movies in Chicago. So Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club, all of his movies he did in the suburbs of Chicago. So that was just a really nice, definite yes, because A, it was John Hughes, and B, it was, I got to stay at home even.
One question I had for that is, how do you get into just competitive judo as a kid?
So there's not a ton of opportunity. I'm not as sure now as much as when I was growing up. We did a lot of driving. I grew up in Chicago, like I said, so pretty much the entire Midwest. We would go to tournaments in Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, and you just basically had to travel to get in enough competitions. But it's all basically, it's a club sport. So it's not in the schools. I mean, in Japan, it's in the schools. That's why, it was born in Japan and it's in the schools, it's in the universities, and that's why they're so competitive. But in the United States, you really have to work hard to get in enough matches and to find competitors to challenge you. So there was a lot of traveling involved and, a lot of hours on the road for sure.
And my scenario is very similar to hers because I mentioned before how there's different styles of wrestling. Now, where I won 2 senior national titles and was 2-time Olympic alternate was in Greco-Roman Wrestling. And to spare everybody going into the precise differences between the three, I happened to grow up near, I was a good high school wrestler, and I wanted to train in the off season and go to a club. Well, lo and behold, right near where I grew up was one of the best Greco-Roman wrestling clubs in the country. So I rolled in there as a 13, 14-year-old wanting extra practice stuff. And I was working out with Olympians and eventual world medalists and that. So a little bit, again, I can talk about the opportunity of coming out here to train when they started this resident program. It was, I think probably somebody grabbed her. She went in and had some good judo coaches, right? When you were younger at a young age. And so a little bit is, you got to have a certain opportunity, some type of a spark or some type of an influence at the right time in order to have the foundation to be successful. So I didn't really seek after being a great Greco-Roman wrestler until it was kind of put in my face a little bit.
I totally agree with that actually, because when I had to change clubs several times because, you kind of outgrow a club if they don't have enough partners for you, or if you kind of take it to another level. When I was 13 or 14, there was 2 brothers that were Olympians, Steve and Erwin Cohen, and they lived 30 minutes away in a northwest suburb of Chicago. And my dad was willing to drive me. And so that was a huge shift in my judo career because it was no longer just, winning local tournaments, winning the junior nationals. They really opened my eyes up to
the bar was set pretty high early.
Exactly. So when your coaches went to the Olympics and they believed that you could actually do anything, accomplish anything, it does open your eyes. And a lot of the people at Chris's Greco Club, they were Olympians. Like one generation above Chris, they were like the current Olympians. So having that exposure, like for instance, with our 2 sons, they're 10 and they're just 11 and 7, whatever they choose to do, I think exposing your kids, whether it be music or athletics, exposing them to people that have accomplished what they're looking to accomplish, it really broadens your perspective of what you can accomplish. Because that happened with both of us, I think.
Yeah, I love how it's just talking about both of your pasts is such foreshadowing of what you guys provide for the community now in terms of the Olympians for all the kids and everything, which is crazy. Let's go ahead and talk about how growing on to just the professional part of your career, highlights and things of that nature. So how was it attending Olympics and things of that nature, going up to that point? Whoever wants to field the question first.
I think the thing you learn when you are past your career and you have hindsight is that it's truly the whole journey. I mean, the outside audience sees the Olympics every 4 years and they think that's what our career is about. But having perspective, I mean, obviously I met my husband when I was 17 at the Olympic Training Center. He was a wrestler. I was a judo athlete. Our friend's Labor Day party that we're going to later trained with Chris on the Greco-Roman Wrestling team. Our neighbors up the street, was a second place in the world championships in Greco-Roman wrestling. a lot of our best friends and our strongest supporters in our community are people that we trained with. So the Olympic experience was amazing, yes, but when you look back on your life as a whole, it's really the whole experience. The Olympics is a snippet, and it truly is just, it's another tournament. It's hard to look at it like that when you're competing in it. It's hard. The people that really do well, I think, are the ones that are able to kind of contain the pressure that goes along with the Olympics, because it's truly just another tournament. Because actually the World Championships, at least in judo, you're allowed to have 2 athletes from each country. So it's much more competitive than the Olympics. But the Olympics has the buildup and the every 4 years, once every 4 years. That's what everybody hears about. But as a whole, I think right after my career, there was definitely some disappointment because I felt like I would have been an Olympic medalist. Because I had won the Junior Worlds at 17 years old and I was the first American to do it, those are the athletes typically who place at the Olympics, the top 3 medalists at the Junior Worlds. So I had high expectations for myself. I always did, and it was kind of my best and worst quality because it pushed me to strive to really achieve. But it also didn't allow me to really celebrate my successes, I feel. So there was some disappointment for sure. Not as much with my first Olympics because I was only 19 years old. I had an amazing experience after I was done competing. There was some disappointment, but it was truly the beginning of my career. I was excited. I felt like I still had an opportunity to achieve all my goals. After the 2000 Olympics, there was definitely, it was hard for me to have any perspective because I really just wanted that medal so badly. Now, in retrospect, you look back at your entire career, and like I said, I met my husband. We run a wrestling club. We have tons of friends who are, we trained with judo and wrestling, tons of athletes. My life as a whole has been enriched so much from pursuing my passion of judo. And that kind of leads me to the one thing a lot of people ask me about is when I decided to quit my acting career to pursue my judo career just solely. I quit acting after I did Home Alone 1 and 2, and I starred in this movie called Big Girls Don't Cry. William Morris, which is one of the biggest agencies, picked me up after that. And shortly after, my dad took me to my first senior national championships, which I thought was ridiculous because I was 14. But he always was pushing because he thought, well, until she loses, I want to keep pushing her to see how far she can go. So I ended up winning that tournament. And I had just switched clubs to my 2 coaches were Olympians. And I just decided on my own completely, I don't want to act anymore. It wasn't my passion. It was something I kind of fell into. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but I really knew that I wanted to pursue the Olympics. And I knew I couldn't do both. So I just went and told my parents, all right, I actually don't want to act anymore. I just want to do judo. And thankfully they said, okay. And that was it. There was no discussion.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I love the thought of just like, well, I'm just going to go to the Olympics. That's my goal now. That's so cool. What about you, Chris? Going from college into the Olympic atmosphere.
So I'm a little different story. As in, I'll be honest with you. I had, aspirations of, I think my goals were set a little bit shorter than hers when I was younger until I eventually got to be an adult. Maybe men mature a little later than women do or something, but I really didn't envision myself winning an Olympic medal or making an Olympic team till I was probably 20 years old or so, and it was after I had some success at a national level, and I wasn't traveling as extensively as she was to these international tournaments at a young age. But then when I had the opportunity out here, had they not started in 1993 an Olympic training center program, I might not have ever wrestled again, to be honest, because I was on the fence and I was good, but I also had a career ambitions and I wanted to do that. But I really enjoyed the wrestling, and it's sports like judo and wrestling are something you really. You can kind of pat yourself on the back because you kind of, it's mano a mano, one-on-one, and you earn it, like I know her think, the acting thing she was great at. I'm sure she had to work hard and remember those lines and all that, but it kind of was, and tell me if I'm right, you didn't really have to work for it. All the blood, the sweat, the risk taking, that feeling of anxiety you have to overcome when you go out and compete in a one-on-one sport. So, not to go off on a tangent, but that's why I encourage, I think, young athletes, men and women to to compete in some type of I think sports are a great foundation for setting goals and achieving things. But the one-on-one, especially combative type sports, are unique in the challenges you have to overcome. So
I totally agree. And I think that's part of why we ended up taking over our kids' youth wrestling club a couple of years ago.
Can you say the name of it really quick?
It's called Rocky Mountain Wrestling Club. And we obviously are doing it a lot for our own children because we have two boys, 7, 11. They both love wrestling. They want to wrestle like their dad. But also we have, in our community just close by, so many of Chris's ex-teammates who trained with him who want to pass it on. There's something about being an athlete where there is this feeling that you want to pass on the opportunities that you got to other kids. So just like Chris and I got to meet Olympians when we were at a young age, and it inspired us and, improved our own athletic career, we're bringing in our friends. This guy won the Olympic championship. This one won the world championships. This one won the Olympics. We have just access to all these people that are just so inspiring. And not only that, but they're great people. And that's who we want to expose our own kids to. And then the kids in our club. It's a fulfilling experience for us. I mean, at first, I think it started as just helping our kids along, but it's been something much more than that, which we've really enjoyed.
It seems like you guys are very much about the journey of individuals, including yourself, in terms of where you want to go in life. Can you talk about coaching your own kids versus coaching other people's kids? Like how is that?
The coaching we're doing now with this Rocky Mountain Wrestling Club, just for disclosure, I mean, there's kids 5 years old to 13. So, and I was the coach of the, Olympic team. And these are like the top of the top athletes. It's way easier to coach at that level than it is a youth level.
That's hilarious.
So yeah. And then it's exponential, when you have to coach your own kid, which I actually don't think it's a good mix. So, I think Hillary agrees with me on this one. Like when my kids are wrestling in the corners, we find it better to have a different coach. When my kid's wrestling in a match, a different coach to be in the corner. Now, if there's nobody else, I'll be there. And of course I'm watching close by, but, it's there's just it's the child parent relationship, and they know everything, you don't know anything, but coming from a different person, and I mean it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, I would give that encouragement to any parent. You're not going to do a good job coaching your son or daughter as somebody else will, and I think that's well, you'll see some relationships out there. I don't know. And you see, this is the dad coaching the tennis player till Wimbledon or whatever it might be. But God, I think it's the rarity. So, I don't know where we got off on that.
I think one thing I want to add too is we come from such different backgrounds because I was pushed really hard. My dad was very involved in my athletic career and definitely pushed me. Even though I was self-motivated completely, I didn't need any really encouragement as far as working harder, but he really pushed me and put a lot of pressure. So I come from a place where I don't want my kids to feel that pressure from me. Like I always tell them, I already finished my athletic career. So I'm not going to want it for you. Because I think there's a lot of parents who want their kids to live
vicariously through them.
They want their kids to have athletic achievements, but it's something that it's inside of them. I don't have that. I did my athletic career. I did what I did. I lived my life. It was my choice. I'm not going to be that person who's pressing them. Now, if they want advice, support, any of that, I will be there for them. But then Chris comes from a perspective where he thinks his parents were supportive, but they didn't push him. And he thinks maybe, somewhere in between is probably better, somewhere in between my experience and his experience. So we kind of try to balance that. Yeah. We want them to work hard. I mean, the thing I wanted to say about what Chris was talking with kids competing in combat sports, I don't care if our kids wrestle or do judo, but I think every kid should do a combat sport of some type, even if they just do the basics, like the beginner, because there is something to be said for not having anyone else to blame the loss on. Yeah. It's all on you. You train, you get what you put into the sport. Yeah. And so I don't know if our kids will want to continue. Maybe they won't even wrestle in high school. I'd be surprised if they didn't, because they seem to want to do what their dad did. But it's just a great confidence builder. And I've noticed that with our own kids. Just the longer they do it and the more they know that our love doesn't depend on whether they win or lose. It's all about effort and attitude. We always just tell them that. As long as you do your best, who knows if somebody's better than you? But if you put your best effort in, you can feel good about it. So we've seen great results, I think, with our kids as far as like confidence building. And a lot of our wrestlers at the club, I'd say 90% of our kids knew zero wrestling when they walked into our club. Chris literally took them from, most of them don't even know their left from right foot. It's like insanity. So there's, it's tough work, but it's fulfilling because you see kids get confident and grow in the sport, and it's going to serve them in life. That's basically the broader picture.
To give viewers and listeners some context, I went to one of the meets, and it is intense what you guys are doing. Like, just to see little kids doing what they're doing, it's especially my niece and nephew, Kate, who you guys coach, Kate and Briley, just seeing them on the floor, just exactly what you're talking about, giving them that experience. It's totally like, it's like a switch happens where they're just like, all right, we're going to get this pin or whatever have you at that moment. But it's really cool to see somebody at that age be so dedicated to something for just that, like, exactly what you guys are talking about, where it's like that one-on-one and you're completely accountable for yourself. It's very powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
Heather was telling me the story about how your dad would take you and put you in situations anywhere where, like, all right, guys, I want you to like duel with my daughter, like, and then it just like until she loses, or can you
quote my dad, he would walk around tournaments after he already put me in probably 2 different divisions, the boys division, the girls division. He'd walk around tournaments and go, "Who wants to fight my daughter?"
Your daughter.
Literally.
And it would happen, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would happen every time. He would set up some exhibition match. And a few times, there's a few that I remember specifically. One that I weighed 75 pounds and this girl was 115. And our family friends who are with us were like, "Malcolm, this is ridiculous. Like, this is child abuse, like, you should not be doing this." But then I would go out there, and I actually remember this one match, and it was tough. And she was a lot bigger than me, but I ended up squeaking out the win. So it just kind of like pushed my dad further to keep doing what he was doing because I kept winning and I kept meeting the challenges. So I think in his own way, he was trying to, if you don't want to see your kid just beat everybody handily. I think that's kind of the weak way to go. You want your kid to be challenged. It's not really great. I love in wrestling with the beginners now, they have A, B, and C groups. So the C's are beginners. And if your kid starts beating all the C's easily, you move them up to B, and then you move them up to A. You want your kid to be challenged. So I think that was what my dad was looking for. It just, from the outside looking in, it seemed a little over the top.
Yeah. But you were winning, so.
I was winning. And something I was going to add about your niece, who I love, Briley.
Mm-hmm.
She's 11, correct? 11, almost 12. She does not seem like the typical wrestler.
Exactly.
Right? So I actually coached her because I coached a couple seasons of track at the kids' elementary school. The coach left and I took over with one of my friends. I'm not a huge runner. I used to do track in high school and stuff. But it's basic introduction to running and working out and stretching and competing. And so Briley had done running with me, and I felt like there was a little part of her that wanted to do the wrestling because Chris and I were involved. And so it's like that whole opportunity, I feel, for Chris and I to pass it on, where she's trying something that's maybe outside of her comfort zone. And I feel like it's given her a lot of confidence. And she's beaten a lot of boys. I think.
Yeah. I was there when she did it.
We surprised her parents, because I think they were thinking their son, Cade, who's great and picked up wrestling really quickly, he would be the one. But I think for her, it's maybe served a different purpose. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with kids. Not that I'm a parenting guru by any means, but I just see, you want to build your kids' confidence. And sometimes they don't know what they're capable of until they're willing to put themselves in that position. And I feel like with Briley, that was something that I was kind of proud of, the fact that she put herself out there and then she saw some success, even if she doesn't continue wrestling.
Facing adversity and things of that nature, that leads me to the question for both of you guys in terms of whether it be kids or when you guys were coming through the ranks yourselves, talent versus hard work. What are you guys' opinion on it, especially at the Olympic or an Olympian level?
I have a lot of opinion on that. I think, I've felt this for a long time just through my training and seeing a lot of my teammates and the ones that were really naturally talented, I think it's a little bit of a curse. The kids that are completely all natural talent, they just from the get-go, they win everything. It sets up in their minds this false belief that you don't have to work that hard because they never really had to. I think I was kind of a good combination of both because I definitely was athletically, naturally talented. But because my dad was really hard on me, I didn't think I was as naturally talented as I was. So I really pushed. And I also think I was just naturally really self-motivated. But I find that the people that are a combination of the hard work and some natural talent will almost always do better, other than the anomaly of just the super talent that nobody can beat. But pretty much, I mean, the hard work is what pushes you over the edge because it's just so hard. There's so many good people.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Or
Yeah, and just to come at a little different perspective, I think you're missing a key third spoke right there.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that is and this is what I think separated potentially me, and Hillary would say this too, from, you know, because we rub shoulders with people that have been Olympic champion and world champion and undefeated through college, and, you know, it's the psychology aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it's
it is.
you know, the some of the people that I saw win medals, I think maybe didn't have as much athleticism as me. Not that I have that much even to speak of, or maybe didn't even work as hard as me. They obviously worked very hard, and we both did, but they had an uncanny way of believing in this, you know, and that last 1%, which separates the champions. And this is something I've had a lot of exposure to because I've, you know, been coaching since I retired, and you know, I've access at the Olympic Training Center, and these athletes that are winning medals versus somebody like myself who didn't win a medal and was close, and, you know, it's like, oh, you were a great wrestler. Yeah, I was a great wrestler, but, you know, this guy that went and won a medal, just seeing the way that they carry themselves and the confidence that they have, and they really just you almost have to be naive to believing that somebody can beat you, at least in a combat sport. I know that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the foundation of the hard work and athleticism and being healthy that day and all that are all part of it. But I truly believe the most important aspect that defines that last percentage between being a great athlete and the best athlete is it's in your head. And that's why, you know, I think you're talking about power couples and all that. But the one thing that I think sports have empowered me with is confidence. And that's why, like, I think, you know, nowadays you can swipe right to go meet somebody, or you can send a text message. Well, guess what? You know, you never really kind of appreciate the anxiety of, hey, Javier, I'm Chris, you know, exactly. you guys want to go do this, or asking out your girl on a date, or having to give a proposal in front of a school. All those things elicit a little bit of anxiety, and you almost have to train yourself for that. So that's what I think that the most powerful thing is. And it's easy when you get further away from, because it was very disappointing for me to be, you know, 2-time Olympic alternate. And that's great. That's awesome. And I won a couple of national titles, but I really wanted that, you know, I really wanted that title. But now I see, I can look back and it's so cliche or whatever to say, but it really was the journey. And it's, you know, now in my professional career, I've done very well. And I see it's the, all those little steps of being able to embrace a challenge, and with just me embracing it, not, you know, having the right guard to lean on too. So there's a little higher perspective, I think, as far as, you know, what really matters as far as being the best. So you got to believe, you know, if you're an athlete and if you don't believe you can do it, nobody's going to believe it. Doesn't matter what your dad thinks or your mom thinks or your coach thinks. Is like, you got to believe it. So and it makes a difference.
Let's dive deeper into that, because one of the things that I love is that it is a one-on-one sport, and you're literally looking the person in the eye when you're competing. What goes through your head in a match, just like a typical match? Like, are you thinking about, all right, this is the type of things where, actually, I'm not even going to try and speak for you because I have no idea what goes through your head, but literally it has to be, especially when you get to those tournaments and you get higher up into, like, all right, am I going to place? Am I not going to place? Like, how intense is it? And what goes through your head when all that stuff happens?
Believe it or not, this is an easy one to answer. My answer is going to be short. She can go on. As soon as the whistle blows, it's all good. You know, so it's an amazing, and anybody that's done, you know, judo, and it really controlling the anxiety and the butterflies, you know, can really zap a lot of your strength. So there's some training to that. And that's why the real best guys, you know, a good friend of mine, Matt Lindland, who's the head coach here now. And I remember warming up with him before he was going out to compete in the Olympic finals, you know. I was more nervous than him. And he's a goofy guy like that. And he'll say it himself, you know, and did some ultimate fighting, but he had this uncanny, and I always kind of lean on him. You know, I look back at him and say, wow, he had it, because he had the ability to turn off or at least give the perception of that. I mean, you know, turn off the jitters to the point where it was zapping your own strengths. But I will say to anybody that's thinking about doing a combat sport or whatever, a one-on-one sport, as soon as the whistle blows and you engage, the nerves go away.
I would agree with that. I would say the nerves is leading up to going out there. Once you're out there, the preparation and the training just takes over. I think the worst thing you can do when you're competing in a combat sport is to think about what to do. I mean, sometimes I would say that causes you to lose if you're thinking too much, because you've already done the training. It should be second nature, and you just let it fly. The best performances I had were when I, for some reason, whether it be a hard weight cut and I was just so glad to be weighed in, or people didn't expect me to do well, that's when I did my best, because I just let it fly. There was no external pressure I felt. I just went and just bowed in and started the match.
Awesome. How has it been on the other side of things, coaching Olympic athletes?
Most of the work is done before you get there. So yeah, I was coaching at the Olympic Games in Rio, but I was there more for support and facilitating, getting around, making somebody feel comfortable. Not there saying, hey, no, put your elbow down here and reach there. That athlete knows what they're doing. They got themselves there. They're gonna wrestle with their own match strategy. So that's why it's a different perspective versus coaching a youth level or somebody that you're literally step by step. No, you lower your level here, step here, drive here, versus somebody at the Olympic Games, and there's all this noise and interviews and making weight and anxiety. They just want somebody that can make them feel comfortable, that can make things easier.
I'm getting that from you right now.
Yeah. That's so, you know, when you're coaching the Olympics, it's not like I had some great technique that they wanted me to go and show the guys how to do this, that, and the other thing. No, it was more of being organized to get the practices going, knowing who to communicate with,
getting the guys what they need
and making them feel comfortable.
Well, I think the best part about when Chris was picked to be the 2016 Olympic coach was because the athletes picked, and they all respect Chris as a wrestler, but also as a person. He's a great person. I'm just patting you on the back, but it's true. He's really successful guy in life and business, and he gives back to the sport. I mean, we're always involved with the wrestling. We love it. We love it for our kids. We love it for ourselves. I mean, one of our best friends is the head coach of the Greco team. And so I think the best part is that those guys wanted Chris there because he does bring a calm to things. He does. I mean, Chris does have that belief that he was talking about in life, as far as, you know, it's going to be good. You guys have everything you need. And I think that that's what they wanted. And, you know, that was a great experience. You know, we were, for all of our kids and for us, we were totally involved with the process of the training and everything.
Great. That was awesome. I appreciate that opportunity very much. But like I said, the being that it's more of a title type of thing that you go with, but it's more of somebody to just kind of facilitate and making things go smoothly and make sure there's no hiccups that are keeping the athletes from getting where they need to be and showing up to have their best opportunity to win. So,
and it's also something that USA Wrestling does, which I think is very smart. They pick someone like Chris as the head coach as an honor, because it's somebody who's given back to the sport repeatedly. Yeah. And that's the best part about it. I mean, being involved with the guys and trying to help is great, and exposing our kids to this experience that, you know, we're long retired, so our kids didn't get to see us while we were competing, but now they get to meet all these guys that are in the process of pursuing their passion, which is great.
Yeah, that leads me to another question. Well, how did the perspective of the other Olympians that are helping you coach now, the kids, how did their perspective just on wrestling in general? How is it now?
It's an interesting question. I guess I couldn't answer for them, but, you know, it's very rewarding it's very rewarding for them. I mean, they've all, and Robbie Smith, who's a real charismatic guy who now was my assistant coach last year, my co-coach. I didn't call it assistant coach, he just took a job at Northwestern University coaching there, and he's still training for the Olympics. But he was really, really helpful. And I know that it provided a lot of joy for him. And it's definitely not for any financial gain for our parts to do it. But yeah, I mean, I know I've learned a lot from that. It's rewarding, and you make an impact. So making an impact in wherever it is in life is if I had to answer for the guys. And now we're going to pick another coach for this year, and I'll draw from the training center one of the younger athletes, and I'll pay him some money from what we collect from dues. That's what that's for. But then we'll always have like guest athletes, and our guest athletes that come in, which is amazing, are, we've had like 4 or 5 Olympic champions come in and talk to these kids. I think some of the kids don't even realize
No, the parents are more impressed. The parents are all like,
which is cool.
And the kids are just like, oh, wow, not all of them, but it's true. I still think though, some things never change about sports as far as, it's a different generation. And so it is somewhat different, but like Robbie, I mean, he's putting the same effort and passion into what we did 20 years ago. And, it's just the journey of who you are as a human. I mean, it's everything that you are. It's really hard to pick out what I am from judo and what's not, because it's just such a huge part of my life. I mean, I met my husband, and now we're running a wrestling club. My brother has one of the biggest judo clubs in the country in Chicago. So it's just a huge part of our life.
At this point, then, what would you guys say is like the highlight of your guys' career? Because it's seeming like what you guys are doing now, giving back to the community. But how would you guys answer that?
Of my career, I mean, like I said, I won 2 national titles. It was amazing. So that was like the highest achievement I did. The coaching in Rio was amazing. I'm so thankful for the opportunity. That was cool. It was really nice to be able to walk out onto the Olympic mats for the actual competitions. Not quite the same as actually competing in it. So I would say that I competed in some tough international competitions. Won a medal in the Pan American Games. Won some other international medals, but being a national champ for me was I wrestled great in the Olympic trials too, both of them. In the one in '96, I was actually ranked 5th or 6th and lost in the finals. And then I was the best guy the 3 years in between there. So 2 of the years and then in the finals got beat fair and square in the Olympic trial finals in 2000 in Texas. But yeah, I mean, it was, 3-2 match. I won the second match 8-0, and then I lost 3-1 the third match. So it really was. I was showing some people this the other day, but in USA Today, they highlighted 2 different athletes that were like almost there. Or it was like an agony of defeat type. I had that headline, Chris Saba loses, finals by this much, and they had some other like kayak or something that was like nosed out by like a 1/100th of a second. So that was pretty depressing after the fact. And one thing we talked about as you were setting up, and I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but I see this happen with some high level athletes, and I get it now. And it's probably the same for athletes across different disciplines, I want to say, whatever, baseball, football, whatever. But sometimes it can be a little bit of a curse if you can't manage it, because I've seen guys that had some real depression issues and substance abuse issues after being Olympic champion or whatever, I'm sure World Series champion, whatever, because it's such a high. I mean, there's no better feeling, like I said, man, winning that national title, and it was amazing, that feeling of achievement, but it's very hard to replicate with other things in life. So I think that's one thing you got to be cognizant of. And I know other athletes have seen some high level athletes that had some tough times after the fact. And I know that's what it's from. It's just, you feel like you'll never get to that pinnacle again. So,
and he's talking about people who won the Olympics.
Yeah, like Olympic champions.
I mean, because it's so
it's
true.
understandable, because it really is hard to replicate, like, the feeling you get from sports, at least winning. It's not the same winning the jackpot or or just monetarily gain. This is something you really work for, you know,
Right.
physically, blood, sweat, and tears, you know. So it's a
Well,
little perspective on something.
one thing with that I would add too is one thing that makes a great athlete is because they're never satisfied.
Yeah.
But never being satisfied is not a great way to live your life.
Yeah.
So that's something I kind of had to shift a little bit because I thought that you had to be dissatisfied in order to motivate yourself to accomplish. But I found that actually, it somehow has the reverse effect actually, because you really have it in you. I mean, if you're motivated to do something, you'll push yourself to do it. But yeah, I totally agree with Chris on that. And as far as talking about the highlights of my career, I mean, I can name certain wins for sure. I mean, definitely being the first to do something is a huge thing because nobody can take it away from you. So when I won the Junior Worlds, I mean, nobody expected that. I was the first American man or woman to do it. There's only been 2 others who have won it. Women, one was Ronda Rousy, the MMA fighter, 10 years later. And then after that, a girl named Kayla Harrison, who became our first Olympic gold medalist. And she has actually 2 gold medals in the Olympics in judo. So pretty accomplished people. So that was definitely a
Are they
huge.
both doing WWE now?
No, just Ronda Rousey is.
Ironically.
Kayla Harrison's actually doing MMA now. But I would say for me, just the entire experience as a whole, I look at it more as just kind of the trajectory of my life. Like I think about what if I wouldn't have quit acting? You know, I just gotten one of the best agents in the industry. And what if I would have gone down that path? I mean, I would have just had such a different life. And I do think, I'm not saying other people are passionate about acting, so I get it. It's the same, it's just a different discipline, but it's such a difficult world to live in. I feel like the whole fame thing is just such a fake, weird, and that's just so not me. The reason I was so drawn to sports is because it's so cut and dry. It's like what you put in is what you get out. It's hand-to-hand combat. It's, you know, it's your best effort, win or lose, and that's it. There's no fake anything.
Yeah, there's very little fame in being you know, there's some of these guys are known when they walk around, but if you know you win an Olympic gold medal in wrestling and then you put your in a crowded mall,
Nobody
1 out of
knows them.
1,000 people will recognize you. You know, you're an NFL football player and you know don't win anything, but you're an NFL football player that starts and you walk in a crowded mall, you might need bodyguards. So or maybe a famous YouTuber too, or something. I don't know. But my perspective is that you really, sports like the ones we did, you really did it not to make money, not to be famous, but to win, to achieve something that you worked hard for. So it's kind of a special,
Kind of an honorable pursuit. I mean, that's what I think the Olympics
Honorable.
used to be
yeah.
about. It's changed and shifted a little
I think
bit.
it's getting watered down.
It's getting watered down. They're adding lots of different weird sports that aren't really well participated in.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it is they need viewers. That's, you know, it's the bottom dollar. But I think, you know, Chris and my athletic pursuits were more, you know, basically just for the passion of it. You know, it's just because we love doing it. And I mean, truly, we did it despite the fact that we weren't gonna have money from it or fame or anything. I mean, we truly only did it because we loved it. Because I mean, Chris didn't really start his career until he was 31. I mean, he's had amazing success starting a career pretty much 10 years after he graduated college. But it shows you what the sport gave to us because he was able to just jump right in.
There's a good shirt, and it's a Dan Gable quote, who's a famous wrestler in the wrestler world, an amazing man. But it says, you know, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like not everything else in life, you know, parenting can be tough and raising kids and all that, but you know, business wise, and you know, for what exposure to business I've had, you know, I've been in a orthopedic sales business. I don't know. It's not that it's been, you know, I've done really well, and a lot of it's just been from the work ethic I've learned from wrestling, and you know, finding a way to check off what needs to be done to get to the end goal. So I think it definitely really preps you for being successful and why a lot of these corporations like to hire athletes, and specifically I know a lot that definitely look high on wrestlers for employment and stuff. So it can, you know, you might not see that as the end, what you're going to get out of it 15 years later.
You guys have perspective though.
Yeah, now, looking back, now I see, it's like all that.
Took a decade or so.
Yeah, exactly.
As we start to wrap this up, one of the things that I love to ask all my guests is, in your guys' craft of what you guys are doing today, how would you say it's either your family that you have now or just some kids that want to achieve the level that you guys have done? What would you tell them if you were just to sit down with them and be like, hey, this is how you achieve being an Olympian?
I would piggyback off what Chris said, because I do think it's the most important aspect, which I didn't master. I think it was the one thing that kept me from being Olympic champion, is whatever you're doing, you have to believe that you can do it. I mean, truly, you have to believe to achieve. It's I worked so hard. I put all the effort in. I had all the natural talent, but there was this piece of me that didn't believe that I was good enough to do it. And so I would say for them, of course, the preparation, of course, the passion, of course, the effort and research and everything, but you have to believe that you can achieve whatever that end goal is, whether it be a dancer, a musician, a singer, an athlete, whatever it is. You have to really believe that you can reach that end goal.
Sure.
And then it propels you forward.
I second that, but I'd say one thing that helped me is set some goals, set some short-term, long-term goals, and write them down. Actually write them, hold yourself accountable to that. And always, and when I say setting goals, set some achievable ones, and then set ones you think you never could possibly achieve. Have like tiered goals, because you just never know. I mean, like I said, don't set the bar too low to yourself, because that can happen. And take yourself out of your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be way out of your comfort zone, but baby steps. Like, that's why, like, I'm nervous to do this. I don't know if I can do this, but maybe I can. That's the one you go and try to tackle. And You're better off if you do that.
Kind of like reverse engineering, like some bigger, like most like, whoa, how do I get to this goal? And then like, well, if I looking at this next month, what do I need to do in order to get to that? And this next week, and then that day of, that's awesome. Is that what you guys teach while you're at Rocky Mountain?
Yeah, and how not to slam the lockers in the hallway when you're running up and down. I'm only kidding.
We've got small attainable.
Yeah.
No, it's different. Not that it's yeah.
For some of our older athletes, I mean, we have such a diverse group. We literally last season we had a 4-year-old. It was ridiculous.
What do you want to do in life?
Yes. So, I mean, I think we have some older athletes who are starting to think about goal setting and, they're going into their high school wrestling career and stuff like that. But, like Chris said, it's baby steps. I mean, some of our kids have never even competed in tournaments. So this season I'm going to compete in 2 tournaments and, place top 6 or whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter. You just got to start.
But I like to challenge the kids to, just like I said, come a little bit I want them to feel a little bit anxious, and feel like to go out, and it might not have to be in a competitive tournament in the public eye, but in the wrestling room. All right, you're going to wrestle Billy versus Jenny, out there in the corner, and they, make them go out and one-on-one do something where the stakes aren't as high as that there's so many eyes on it, but maybe there's only a couple eyes on it, and maybe it's just their 2 eyes on it, and then build up from that. Because I think that's the, like we said, the core thing I think you could get out of, our journey is the being able to, when the challenge comes, and they come in life, and you're surprised with something, and it's go time. Can you handle it or can you not? And what better way than preparing yourself for that by putting yourself in those situations before they actually happen.
I totally agree with that. I think the best lesson that we're trying to pass on to our kids and to our athletes is it's okay to be nervous, but don't let it stop you from pursuing your goals. Because I was nervous as can be. I mean, I threw up before tournaments when I was a kid for years. It was ridiculous. I was like my thing. I threw up everywhere. My dad's like, what the heck? Yeah, it was like my thing. But I never let it stop me from doing what I wanted to do. And so I would say that's the biggest lesson. And I think, just in our perspective, and not that we know a lot about other sports, but with team sports, which are great, we both played team sports as well. But there is something different about going out there on your own. You can't really rely or blame on other people when you're in an individual sport. So our kids will both do team sports and individual sports. because of that. I mean, we did the whole soccer thing. It didn't even feel like it was a game. I don't know if anybody knew the score at the end. You know, I mean, for us, like, I want there to be a winner and a loser. I think as parents, this generation, for some reason, we're kind of, the pendulum has swung and we're trying to protect our kids a little bit too much from the winner, loser, A grade, F grade. Like, you know, nothing is just the way real life is, which is it can be harsh. Yeah. But I'd rather them be prepared. And it's not like I want my kids to be, you know, depressed and sad about losing. I want them to see, hey, you lost, but guess what? You trained your hardest. You gave your best effort. And guess what? Nothing happened. We still love you. You have a great life and the world keeps on going. I think that's actually a great lesson. And we're trying to protect them a little bit too much from that.
Yeah, I love that facing adversity brings out the best in people, and especially like personally, like I was an average student in college. I find myself like telling this story a lot on the podcast just because like all the people I'm interviewing have faced a lot of adversity, but it took me a year and a half to get into the School of Music, and all I wanted to do was get a music engineering degree to do recording, things like that. But in order to get into the School of Music, I didn't know how to play an instrument. And then once I figured out how to play an instrument, then I got into the school and so on and so forth. But what ended up happening is I had this overall goal of like, well, I know I want to achieve recording arts, right? Well, how do I get that? And then once that clicked, I started to become like, oh, I'm a dean's student because I'm on the dean's list because now I have this fuel to be like, all right, well, what's the purpose or why am I doing this? And I had a why. And it's just like, and what you guys are talking about, it's so cool to, when you throw yourselves into those situations and you're stretching yourself, it brings out so much more of what you think is capable. Amazing story, guys. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This is great.
Where can people, if they want to get involved, where can they find you?
We live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. You know, if you got a young man or woman, boy or girl, however you want to say it, that's interested in wrestling and wants to give it a shot, Rocky Mountain Wrestling is our club. And, you know, we have a website, the Facebook page thing, the whole deal. So you could Google it and find it, and, you know, all is welcome, or reach out to us. So that's what I would say. If not, good luck with pursuing your dreams.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
If you want to catch me, I'm at Javier Mercedes X on all the social things. And if you want to support the podcast, leave a review on iTunes. I'm just going to repeat it again. Leave a review on iTunes. Thank you. All right. Thanks again. Until next time, ask yourself why. If you enjoyed this episode of Passion in Progress with Javier Mercedes and got value out of what you've heard today, please consider sharing this episode out with a friend. Share it via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and tag me at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes X. I love reading what people have to say about the podcast, and reading your feedback is what makes this podcast better. Thank you, and go out and pursue your passion.